Ayo, it's Zempuck here. Another day, not working for the man. God, I love my life, and I want you to love your life too. Okay, so back to questions from friends. Today's question comes from one of my peers who asked, in personal finance, what do I do after I've got an emergency fund and a 401k contribution as well? Okay. So, first of all, congratulations. Wow. Okay. You're doing better than half of Americans, right? By doing those two things. Probably more. So, I look at those two things, emergency fund and 401k, as kind of like, you know, the bread around the sandwich or the the bun around the burger. You have to have those two, right? If you're missing the top bread or the bottom bread for a burger, it's gonna be a real weird burger, right? Because an emergency fund covers you in the very short term, and the 401k, your retirement savings, covers you in the very long term, right? So now what you have to find is what you want in the middle of your burger, the filling, the meat of it, right? But first, before I get into that, I want to clear up something about what an emergency fund is, right? Usually, when people talk about it, they're talking about something that you need to cover, like an unexpected expense, like your AC breaks or your car needs a repair, right? That's fine and all, and those are the research that shows, that talks about how 45% of Americans can't find like $1,000 in cash, right? So some people think like that's your emergency fund. That's actually correct, right? That is the emergency fund. But I would say that what you need as the top bun of your burger is not just something that covers an emergency repair, but really I'd like to call this the emergency plus fund, right? So what's your emergency plus fund? Honestly, it should be you should look back on your life and see how long it took you to find your last job. Okay, if it was 6 months, then you need 6 months of living expenses. Now, if you have a family and children, I would suggest actually even an even longer period of time of equivalent expenses, right? So, if you have a family of three, I'd suggest a year of living expenses, right? What's the point of this emergency plus fund? The whole point is like in case the company that you work for, uh, suddenly goes bankrupt, like a whole Enron type of situation, and you're out of a job, you need enough money to keep you going until you could find another job. And it's much harder when you have a family, right? Like you can't just move anywhere where the job is, right? You need more time for that. So therefore, if you have more responsibilities, you need a bigger emergency fund to cover like a catastrophic break in income, like a job loss, right? Not just car breaking down, okay? Car breaking down, you might be able to Uber it for a couple of days or maybe a week. But if you lose your primary source of income, for the vast majority of Americans, you're in big trouble, right? Most Americans don't have enough savings, right? That's why I'm like your savings should be able to cover however long reasonably you think it would take for you to find another job in a similar field. Okay? Now that we've covered that part and the 401k, what should be in the middle? Now, like I said, the emergency fund covers you in the short term, and the 401k is supposed to cover you when you're a senior citizen, essentially, right? So, what is the purpose of any other type of investment? It's to cover the middle part of your life, right? However old you are from now until you actually reach real retirement age, right? Now, again, if you don't mind retiring at 67 or 70, for millennials or Gen Zers, that's what it's going to be, okay? Prepare for the worst case, you're going to retire at 70, right? If you don't mind retiring at that age, the type of investment that you need to make besides your 401k or any explicit retirement accounts is not as pressing, right? I think you absolutely should work towards additional investments, not just in retirement accounts, right? If you read the financial news, all they talk about is 401k balances, as if that's the totality of what people's wealth should be. I think that's completely ridiculous and silly, okay? You should have individual brokerages set up, right? You should have other investments that are not part of your living expenses, not part of your emergency fund in case you lose your job, and also not part of your retirement savings. Okay, those should be the what I call the meat of the sandwich, or the the filling in the burger patty, or whatever analogy you want, right? So what should I actually invest in? Well, you should look at, for instance, you should always look at what the biggest expenses people have, right? So my first suggestion is you should take care of your housing situation. Now, I'm not suggesting that everyone should buy a house rather than rent, right? I think this method is more relevant for people in certain situations. For example, if you have a family kind of association with the area that you live in, say your parents live there, your grandparents live there, you're from there, and you love this area. In that case, you should think about putting roots down. In which case, housing purchases should be in the back of your brain, right? On the other hand, if you're the kind of person that wants to hit like lean fire before you're 35 or something like that, like a very young age, and you want to do geographical arbitrage and like move to a much cheaper place in Southeast Asia, or I don't know, Eastern Europe or something like that, then buying a house in the United States is probably not the best idea if you think you can achieve your goal in less than 10 years. And that money can be put better to better use in other types of investments, right? But this is a very personal choice, and it's different for everyone, right? So I think the safest thing is generally, yes, you take care of your housing with real estate, and think about it like this, right? If you buy a piece of real estate that you yourself would live in, right? And I assume you're a conscientious, intelligent person, and relatively sanitary as well, okay? If you would live there, even if you happen to need to move at some point in the future unexpectedly, you should be able to rent out your house or apartment and make it a source of income. So it's not a bad idea to do that at all, because especially we're assuming you already have a 401k, right? Because 401k is usually invested in stocks and bonds. So as of right now, we're assuming you have emergency fund in very liquid accounts like CDs or savings, and you have 401k that's invested already in some mixture of stocks and bonds. That's why for the middle portion, the intermediate time frame for investments, the first thing I think you should do is take care of housing, right? Again, there are other options that I can suggest, none of which are speculation, right? Like if you're asking, hey, now that I have money to play with, should I invest in Bitcoin? I can't personally give you that advice because I think Bitcoin is just total BS, okay? It's the tulips of the 21st century. That's because I'm dumb, okay? I don't understand Bitcoin, so maybe I'll be wrong in 50 years. That's okay. I don't have to be right about every kind of investment, right? Because, well, I'm already right about most of my investments because I'm retired already. So, yeah. If you take that into account, right? Like I've already succeeded completely. So, yeah. Okay. So Bitcoin is stupid. Any kind of day trading, same idea, right? That if you're doing that, that's gambling. Okay. It's not investment at all. So you might say, what else can I do? Well, I mean, it doesn't hurt to read books on investment. It doesn't hurt to do your research. I'm not saying that you can't go buy individual stocks at all, right? You can. It just depends on the level of work that you want to put in, right? And keep in mind, it is work, okay? It absolutely is work. Investment means educating yourself, and depending on the type of person you are, how much time in a week do you want to devote to something that's not your primary job? Now, if you're like a math nerd and you really just love studying, like doing research on the market or whatever, that's different, right? I'm saying for the majority of people, index funds do wonderfully. If you're feeling really conservative, you can go look up like dividend aristocrats. There's ETFs that follow dividend aristocrats or the S&P 500. just think about it like this, right? Warren Buffett said that when he dies, for his own family, all he would do is have them mostly buy S&P 500 index funds. Okay, so if it's good enough for his surviving family, I think it's good enough for the rest of us. Okay, and I've heard the rebuttal saying like, oh yeah, but Warren Buffett didn't make his money, investing in that fashion. That's true, but he's like an extreme outlier, right? I like his position on what he's going to do for his family after he dies, is because he understands that once he dies, I mean, he doesn't know whether someone else could be this extreme outlier that could follow his trend, right? I'm talking about like any other professional managers, right? So if the S&P 500 index fund is according to the greatest investor in the history of mankind, if that's good enough for his family, I think it's good enough for the rest of us, right? All right, I hope this helped a little bit and to get you on your way to financial independence. If you have any questions, please comment below and ask away for more specifics, and I'll be happy to address those.